from Winnipeg.
Hi, I'm Jamie Poisson, and I host the CBC's daily news podcast. It's called Front Burner. Every weekday, we explore the big news stories and issues shaping Canada and the world. It could be the latest hurdle for aid agencies on the ground in Gaza, or a conversation with a tech whistleblower. The Prime Minister recently stopped by, too.
I am worried anytime Canadians are angry and pessimistic about the future.
Front Burner. Check us out wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube.
You know the feeling of finding a really good podcast? Or the feeling of someone always being there, like your favorite radio show. Stream CBC Podcast.
This is CBC News. At 12 o'clock, we're at 17 degrees with overcast conditions in downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon, I'm Matt Humphrey. Today, Manitobans are honoring the memory of Cathy Merrick. The first ever woman Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs is now lying in state at the Legislative Building, the Manitoba Legislative Building. Karen Paul has your details.
Grand Chief Cathy Merrick's casket was led up the marble stairs of the Manitoba Legislature by a group of Indigenous singers, carrying her headdresses and a star blanket. RCMP and Winnipeg police officers were the pallbearers. The procession included family and First Nations leaders. There was a private sacred ceremony before the public viewing began. Merrick was a pioneer, the first female Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. She's being remembered as a powerful leader and advocate who always had a kind word and a hug. Merrick's casket will be escorted out of the legislature at 5 o'clock and will be accompanied by horse riders to a wake. There will be a funeral Saturday in her home community of Pimicikamak Cree Nation. Merrick died suddenly last week, collapsing while speaking to reporters in Winnipeg. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The City of Winnipeg is revealing what it's prepared to do to help True North Real Estate redevelop Portage Place Mall. That help adds up to $40 million in grants and tax relief. The CBC's Bartley Kivas explains.
The real estate wing of the company that owns the Winnipeg Jets plans to spend $650 million to purchase and redevelop Portage Place. True North plans to build a healthcare tower and a residential tower above the mall and dismantle the glass atrium. In a new report, the city says it'll provide True North with $14 million of property tax relief over the next 25 years, plus $10 million worth of housing grants and $16 million worth of infrastructure spending. The province is helping the project by leasing medical space in the healthcare tower. True North still has to pull the trigger on its purchase of the mall from its private owner in Vancouver. It must also pay the Forks $35 million for the parkade below the mall and the rights to build above it. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
We're hearing a warning today from Winnipeg Police about a scam involving fake taxis and debit card skimming. Police say vehicles with fake taxi signs on their roofs drive through high-traffic areas like parking lots. A person acting as a passenger gets out and approaches a bystander for help. They say the taxi doesn't accept cash and asks if they can borrow their debit card to pay their fare in exchange for cash. The debit card is then skimmed and used to drain the victim's bank account. Police say the Financial Crimes Unit is working with the City of Winnipeg to spread awareness of that scam. A plan to convert a house into a live-in recovery facility in Lindenwoods is facing opposition. Dozens of neighbors have filed appeals against the proposal, and a hearing is set for today. Details now from the CBC's Cameron McLean.
The non-profit Regenesis Center for Recovery wants to turn a house on Lindenwood Drive East into a temporary home for people recovering from addictions. The city approved a conditional use application allowing the house to be used as a treatment facility. 95 residents have filed notices of appeal against that decision, along with 75 letters opposing the plan. It would turn the house into a temporary location for Regenesis, which plans to rent the house until around August 2025 while it searches for a permanent location. It would provide supervised wraparound care to women, non-binary adults, and those who identify as people of color, LGBT, and disabled. Opponents of the plan note the home's proximity to a nearby school, seniors home, and community center. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says his party will put a non-confidence motion before the Commons at the earliest possible opportunity. And it will be, in his words, a put-up-or-shut-up moment for Jagmeet Singh and the NDP.
I'm asking him to answer the question he has dodged 31 times. Will you vote non-confidence to trigger a carbon tax election at the earliest possible time? Yes or no?
Last week, Singh announced he was ending the NDP's supply and confidence agreement with the Liberals, but Poilievre has dismissed that as a politically motivated stunt designed to help the New Democrats in 2 by-elections next Monday. And finally, turning to the weather, if you like this extension of summer-like warmth we've been having, you're going to enjoy the early part of the fall. Earlier this week, the highs have reached 30 degrees. Chris Stammers is a meteorologist with Environment and Climate Change Canada. He says the heat is staying with us, likely into October.
Certainly this really hot weather that we've been seeing, like our normal right now is only 19, and we're pushing 30 earlier this week. And today will be a little cooler, but still 23 is above normal. And then it looks like the heat builds back in late this week, and we stay mid to upper 20s kind of well until almost middle or late next week.
Stammers says the long-range models so far say warmer than normal weather will continue. And that is your CBC News from Winnipeg. For news anytime, you can head to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba, or you can use the CBC News app. Staying with the weather in Winnipeg today, cloudy and smoky, a high of 23 degrees. Brandon, a chance of showers or storms and smoky, a high of 23. Dauphin, a chance of storms or showers, a high of 22. Flin Flon, very smoky. You have an air quality advisory, a high of 21 in Flin Flon. Thompson, sunny, a high of 20. And on the bay in Churchill, sunny and windy with a high of 17. You're listening to CBC.
Well, good afternoon, Manitoba, and welcome to Radio Noon on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at the show on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. This hour on the program, it is not every day. In fact, in history, in modern history, there's only been 2 people that have had the honor. In our whole Manitoba history, only 6. It's not every day that someone is lying in state at our Manitoba legislature, but Cathy Merrick is this afternoon. We're going to take you there live off the top of the show in a moment, where Faith Fundal has been hearing from some of the people and experiencing the mood of what this means. In addition, this hour on Noon, it's a tale of abandoned children and an escape to a new life in Canada. We're going to hear why an Ontario woman's headed to Scotland to share a story that was once a family secret. In addition, on the call-in today, of course, last night, some of you might have watched the U.S. presidential debate. If you did, why? Why does it matter to you as a Manitoban, as a Canadian? You can always call us in the back half of the show between 12:30 and 1. We'll have that live conversation, and you can leave a message now if you're not available over that part of the lunch hour at 788-3797. 12:07 is the time right now. A small, quick, good afternoon to our team behind the controls. May McKillop. Hi, May. Wendy Parker is producing Radio Noon today and also directing the program. Hi, Wendy. And good afternoon to Kevin Ipatebo, who is once again behind the YouTube controls today, if you want to weigh in on the program there or watch what's happening. Well, as mentioned, let's now go to the ledge. The late Grand Chief Cathy Merrick of the AMC's body now lies in state at the Manitoba legislature. Now, starting just moments ago, the legislature is open to the public. People there can sign a book of condolences and pay respects after a private ceremony was held this morning. CBC's Faith Fundal is there. You can hear in the background probably, and they join us from the steps of the ledge. Hi, Faith.
Marcy, good afternoon.
So today began with a sunrise ceremony at the Forks, Cathy Merrick's casket arriving where you are now at 10 o'clock. Pallbearers for the RCMP and Winnipeg Police Service carried her into the legislature. What's the mood like there right now?
Out here, there's probably about a dozen or so folks lined up outside the legislative building. People looking down on their phones, some folks with their hands behind their backs. I would describe the scene here as reserved. Folks are here to pay their tributes. And I briefly went inside to see how long the line goes. When you enter the legislature, you will see some flags and a book that folks can sign as well. for people who want to pay their respects, there is also room 200, and that is where the casket with the body of the former Grand Chief lies in state. The doors open at noon for the public today, and they'll have until 5 o'clock, roughly around there, to be able to do that. I would say there are lots of folks here who are wearing ribbon skirts, some folks wearing shoes with beads. Folks here, the sense that I get is that they're here to pay tribute to someone who was very important to them.
What's the makeup of the crowd? Are you seeing, old and young faces in that lineup as you described? I'm just curious whether or not, because effectively what we're doing today is paying respects. This is a funeral service.
It is a funeral service, and when I look, there are what looks like moms with their kids. Some strollers are also here at the lineup, but there also are folks who are not young. Many folks here who have known Kathy Merrick for some time, sitting outside having a cigarette just before we spoke. I spoke with someone from Saging First Nation. Her name is Mish Daniels. She said she came here to pay her respects because her connection to Kathy Merrick was from about 27 years ago. She tells me that Kathy was part of the original Sundance family in Spruce Woods, Manitoba. That I asked her what she thought Kathy might say if she saw what was happening here, the attention and the honor that the tributes that have been given, and she said that really she is a shy person and she might be very surprised with what people are doing here. There are many different types of folks who are here, but one thing is clear, is that Kathy Merrick had an immense impact in their lives, and this is their way of being able to reflect that.
Anything to add, Faith, just while you're there and being mindful? I know things are changing around you that you want to add while we have you live from the ledge.
The family, so my understanding from one of the security folks is that the public line is open, but they're not quite yet letting folks upstairs. Earlier today, there were about 140 people in room 200 for the ceremony. Another 60 folks have been watching from an overflow room. The ceremony was delayed a bit, so right now folks are waiting outside. But it did open at noon, and it is available here. Folks can pay their respects up until 5 p.m.
All right, Faith, I know you're going to have ongoing coverage once you get on the air with your program back here at CBC later. Thank you very much for being live and for being there this afternoon and taking some time for noon.
Thank you.
That is CBC's Faith Fundal, who is, of course, the host of Up to Speed, reporting live from the Manitoba Legislature. So as Faith mentioned, people can sign the Book of Condolences in honor of Kathy Merrick. That is from now until 8 o'clock tonight. And you can pay respects to Kathy Merrick, who is now lying in state, until 5 o'clock today. Tonight, just to reiterate, her remains will be taken to the RBC Convention Centre for a wake. She will then be returned to her home community of Pimicikamak, Cree Nation. And what we're experiencing in the province, as I alluded to in the conversation with Faith, is unusual. This honor that is bestowed upon someone. So in recent memory, Kathy Merrick's the second person to lie in state in recent history. The other person in our recent memory would be Elijah Harper in 2013. And the sixth person in our entire provincial history. So the other people who are on that list who have lay in state in Manitoba, Rodman Roblin, 1937. Sir John MacDonald in 1929. Also in 1929, James Albert Manning Aikens. And in 1896, John Christian Schultz. If you want to read more about the life and the legacy of Kathy Merrick, please go to our web story at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Whether it's breaking news from around the world, across the country, or in your own hometown, it's all at your fingertips on the CBC News app. Get the top stories from where you live under the local tab, or watch video clips, live events, and the national on your smartphone or tablet. Get all the news you want, when you want it, where you want it, with the CBC News app. Download the app for free today.
Well, let's get into the weather for your noon hour here. It is 13 minutes after 12 o'clock, we're at 19 degrees. Our daytime high today in Winnipeg is 24, so cooler than yesterday, but still above our normal temperatures at this time of year. The average high for Winnipeg, 19, so we're going to reach 24. Winds are calm. It is, some sunshine in the downtown, a little bit hazy. We've had an air quality statement with us because of the smoke. Coming into tonight's forecast, we're going to get to 16 degrees for an overnight low. And then tomorrow, a mix of sun and clouds and a high again of 29. But as Matt was just saying on the news, we are in for a warm rest of the month and even into October above normal temperatures. So that's what we're looking at for today in Winnipeg. Currently around the province, Tuduli Lake is the cold spot at 11 degrees. Sprague is the warm spot just at 20 degrees right now. And we do have still those smoky conditions, including all the way up to Flin Flon, with smoke being reported this hour. Over in Brandon, it's mostly cloudy. It is 17 degrees currently. And in Dauphin right now, it is sunny and it is 18 degrees. Looking further around the province, Victoria Beach sitting at 17, so maybe you still have some time off. Maybe you're still in the beaches areas of Manitoba. And over in Roblin, it is also 17, so pretty consistent across southern Manitoba. Well, I don't know about you, but in my family, there are secrets. Sometimes they come out accidentally, like when you're at a family gathering and someone says something and you're like, what? What happened? What's the story there? A Canadian woman is setting out on a trip to Scotland, but not just to see the sights. Jamie Lees is headed from southern Ontario to Dundee, where she'll curate an exhibition at the city's Central Library. It is about her great-grandmother, and it's called Left at the Wellgate, The Untold Story of Mary Petrie Smith. The display explores a long-hidden family secret that took some sleuthing to uncover.
The untold story is that in 1911, she left two boys, 1 and 2, her two sons, in a pram in front of a pub and left to make her way to Canada. We knew she was from Scotland, my great-grandmother, but we had no other information. She was very tight-lipped about her background, never shared anything, and if you were to ask, you would not get an answer. So it was after she passed, after her son, my grandfather, passed here in Canada, my grandmother and I started to do a little sleuthing. It was soon discovered that she had been married before in Scotland. And then soon after, I found that she had these 2 children, and I was flabbergasted, to say the least. No one here in Canada knew of this. For my grandmother, who that would have been her mother-in-law, they didn't really get on that well, but she knew something was not right, and she knew she had a secret. And so for her, she thought, this finally, I know, she got the answer. For me, I needed to know more. That's, where I was. I needed to know why. My grandmother, too, she said, even though we didn't get along, she said, there is no way she left those children unless she absolutely had to. And that thing that she said to me has stuck with me all this time and has pushed me forward to, find out more and to, think there definitely was something that made her do it. It wasn't she was just a horrible person and this is what she did, because she ended up having 3 sons here in Canada, including my grandfather, and she was a wonderful mother. I did get in touch with her husband's family there, and this is the story that they were telling, that she left them there in front of a pub. And so part of that seems kind of unlikely to me. She didn't drink, he didn't drink, why a pub, this sort of thing. But, when you look at what was going on in Dundee at that time, the crowding, 72% of the population lived in 2 rooms, and one of them was the kitchen. And you may have had 7 children, and you're living in a 2-room tenement. Canada was advertising for Scottish workers to come in every field here, in the shipbuilding field, farming, domestic service. And so a lot of men were leaving their families behind and not sending for them after, because, once they got here, they started a new life. I did learn that her husband took the children And they all moved into one of these tenements with his parents and his sister and his older brother. The oldest son, had a very good life and so forth. And the youngest son had a lot of struggles. I tucked it away for 20 years because when I got back from Scotland, I was emotionally drained, and I just was having a really difficult time with it. I felt a lot of shame, a lot of sorrow. I can see right now I get upset talking about it. But a series of synchronicities happened when we were in lockdown, and I started to look at the material again. And then everything just started to take hold. And I saw a post on Facebook that the Dundee Library was doing this Wellgate project, and the Wellgate is where she left the children, and they were looking for stories. So I thought, I have a story. When I went to the spot where she left the children, there's a set of stairs. It's a medieval shopping district, or rather, it's been there since the medieval times. And so I was brought to the spot, and I wanted to see this rather famous spot as well where she left the children. And I gleefully walked up these steps, and as soon as I got to the third step, I could not go any further. And I just broke down crying. Was I feeling what she felt that day? Was I feeling what they felt that day? So when I got back, I as I say, I left it alone, and I've just now gone back to back in there.
Jamie Lee's headed from Southern Ontario to Dundee, Scotland, where a month-long exhibition will open on the weekend, on Saturday, at the city's Central Library. It is all about her great-grandmother, and I don't know if you're going to have the guts to call us or if it'll be allowed in your family. But if you have a family secret and you have a story to share about how that unfolded in your own world, we'd love to hear about it. 788-3797 is the listener line here on Radio Noon. 788-3797.
Angeline Tadaweo hosts The Block.
Afrobeats to jazz, hip-hop to R&B, Calypso, Kez the Band, Michelle Montano, Bob Marley, Bounty Killer. So we really give all these artists a chance to shine, and the key is in the programming, in making it make sense, and making sure that the music is fluid, a fluid experience.
The Block with Angeline Tadaweo. Available now on CBC Listen.
How you doing out there in your lunch hour? Getting through it? As I was saying, a short week last week, and now we're into the full week. It's back around to school day number 1 on the cycle. So maybe you're on lunch and you're a student, got your earbuds in out there in the sunshine. 19 right now in Winnipeg, and it is, some sun downtown. In other parts of the city, it's actually quite hazy and cloudy. And as we've been mentioning, we're going to head to a high of 24 today in Winnipeg. Well, our call-in is coming up shortly. Between 12:30 and 1 o'clock, we invite you in on a conversation to call in and let us know what you're thinking on various topics. We do that daily. Today, we're going to invite you live to call in and have a conversation with us about last night's presidential debate in the United States. It was a historic debate. This is just weeks now before the U.S. presidential election, effectively. A face-off between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, and they're in a fight for the White House. They're nearly in a dead heat when you look at the polls. And this was the first time that they met face-to-face, so that was interesting as well. I watched all of it. I'm wondering if you did too, and why. What did you think, and what prompted you to watch as a Manitoban? As a Canadian, why did you watch? So you can get ready to call in live. We're hoping you'll write down the number maybe now and, weigh in. I always give the area code. The number to call, 204-780-0893. 204-780-0893. Have that handy, or you can also call the listener line. Now, to get you thinking about this, let's play an exchange from last night's debate. This is Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, and part of their exchange over abortion rights.
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers, to go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body, and that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
excuse me, I have to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer
That's
the
problem.
question? Would you
because
veto?
Under Roe v. Wade,
Answer the question, would you veto?
You could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th month,
not true.
and probably after birth.
So that is not true. That was corrected last night. And one of the U.S. networks was doing a fact check during the debate and counted 33 lies that Donald Trump told last night. That was one of them. I just want to clarify here, off the top, when Kamala Harris in that exchange was saying, as you rightly point out, she was not referring to Donald Trump. She was referring to the moderator, who was also in another moment of correcting something that was falsely said by Donald Trump last night. So that was just one exchange. The whole debate was an hour and a half. It was live. And we're going to hear what you had to think, what you thought about it last night. Why did you watch? Why do you care about it? Why are you following the election in the States as a Manitoban? What is your in point on this? And so we want to hear from you in our live call-in today. Our guest to talk us through it, and we'll hear more from the debate as well, is Sean McDonald, instructor at the University of Manitoba, Asper School of Business, who also has specialty degrees in politics and government. So stay tuned for that between 12:30 and 1. And we hope you join in and call us live. 12:26 is the time. Currently, it's 19 degrees, as we've been mentioning, in Winnipeg. And earlier this hour, we heard Matt mention on the news how warm it's been and how warm we're going to stay. And so we kind of pulled music that feels a little bit summery. It's got the vibe. It's from Vancouver's Ivan Hartle, who spent a good part of the last few months out on the road. This tune's called So Am I.
Complicate this, I don't know. Always in a constant state of yes and no. Maybe I'm living all my life in vain. Ooh, but now you got me feeling some kind of way. Just your laughing after all is everything that I could want. Just your laugh is so dear. You said you fly and I felt so am I. So am I. Yes, I'm quick to rush aside. You're right with you next to me, and I'll never get enough of what you do. Oh, I can never get enough of you. Oh, just your laughing after is everything that I could want. Just your laugh is so dear. You said you fly and I felt so am I. So am I. Well, 'cause when I'm on the precipice, feeling the weight of the world, nothing but you so divine. You said you fly and I felt so alive.
So am I. That's Ivan Hartle on Radio Noon. I'm Marcy Marcusa, sitting in for Janet Stewart this week. Thanks so much for joining us here on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. And we sure hope you stick around for after the news, because our live call-in is going to begin. So here are the numbers once again if you want to weigh in on last night's U.S. presidential debate. Did you watch? Why did you watch? Why are you paying attention to the U.S. presidential election this year in particular? So we've already got some comments coming in, but if you want to call live, just a reminder of those numbers. Once again, they are 204-780-0893. Or you can text us as well, 204-588-7355. Your CBC Radio News is next.
This is CBC News. At 12:30, we're at 19 degrees with overcast conditions in downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon. I'm Matt Humphrey. Members of the public can now pay their respects to the late Kathy Merrick. The body of the first woman Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs is lying in state at the legislature. Before the public viewing, her casket was led into the building. The CBC's Ian Fraze reports.
While her family and First Nation chiefs looked on, the casket holding the body of the late Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs was carried by RCMP officers and slowly walked up the steps of the legislature. Behind her, Merrick's family, some wearing red ties, solemnly followed behind, along with First Nation chiefs, Premier Wab Kinew, and other community members. Once inside the legislature, the procession was led up the grand staircase and into a room for a private ceremony. A public viewing is scheduled to start during the noon hour and continue until 5 p.m. Then a procession will lead the mourners to the RBC Convention Centre for a wake. Ian Fraze, CBC News, Winnipeg.
At least 179 people are dead after Typhoon Yagi tore its way through Vietnam. That's the sound of boats filled with emergency supplies making their way along flooded roads to access stranded villages. Even parts of the capital, Hanoi, are underwater after the Red River in Vietnam overflowed. Yagi is the most powerful typhoon to strike Asia this year. For days, it walloped northern Vietnam, ravaging infrastructure and triggering evacuation orders for thousands of people. And as you've been hearing, pop superstar Taylor Swift is throwing her support behind Democratic nominee Kamala Harris. It dropped last night, moments after both presidential candidates sparred in their first and possibly only debate. The endorsement to her 283 million Instagram followers could have a large influence on the November election. Here's Caroline Bargout with more.
Last night was a big success for President Trump.
That's Donald Trump's National Press Secretary, Caroline Leavitt. But most people who watched the ABC News debate would disagree. Polls show 63% of voters think Kamala Harris did a better job. The Democrat started off a little shaky, but she stayed on message and tried to show American voters that she had the right temperament to be president. Trump, on the other hand, started off strong, criticizing the Biden-Harris administration for high inflation rates. But as the night wore on, it became apparent he was ill-prepared and had a hard time landing the key points of his campaign. Despite that, Leavitt insists support for the former president has grown.
They trust President Trump more to handle the economy than they do Kamala Harris, and his support on the issue of the economy actually increased after last night's debate.
Harris has challenged Trump to another debate in October, but he has yet to agree to that. Caroline Bargout, CBC News, Washington.
And for news anytime, head to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thank you, Matt.
Back soon.
Matt Humphrey in our news center this morning. It is 12:33 on Radio Noon on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Our call-in begins in a moment on that debate. But first, let's go to Riley Laitchuk and talk more about the weather. Hi.
Hi. I'm going to put a call out first. I did this on Up to Speed yesterday. I'll do it again today. I'm looking for some of your weather photos to share anywhere in Manitoba, something scenic-y. Might not get to it on the show tonight, but certainly throughout the week, I'll try to get some more weather photos on.
Ooh.
I love showcasing our
I
province.
like that. Do you also take photographs yourself? Do you like that?
Yeah, absolutely.
What's what can you describe one of your faves this summer? You probably have a lot, but
I'm a sucker for a good sunset.
Yeah.
So
yeah. My favorite one I just had blown up, actually. We did a live information radio morning show in Clear Lake.
Oh, right.
Around the whole zebra mussel issue. And that was when the curtain was being installed. The one we now know is now out of the lake. But when we were there, I got, you'll love it. I should send it to you. I know that
I'll show it on air.
He won't use mine on air. He won't do that, okay? But it was actually of a sunset, so you'll appreciate it.
I'm a sucker for a good sunset. Love getting out when I can, because sometimes it gets dark quite early when we're still here to get some good sunset photos.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just get in the car, drive somewhere.
Do you? Yeah. Oh, you're like that.
Yeah.
That's serious about it.
Anyway, talk back at cbc.ca. I'll be waiting for some photos. I'll talk about the air quality quick because we still do have some air quality alerts in place. Air quality advisory for Grand Rapids, the Paw, Flin Flon into Lynn Lake again today. This is from wildfire smoke that is coming in from Saskatchewan. A little bit of haze still hanging around here in southern Manitoba. That's because of wildfires that are burning in Idaho. That smoke is being dragged up along a bit of instability that is starting to move into Manitoba. So we have a little bit of cloud cover starting to build into southern Manitoba. Generally a sun cloud mix. I'll talk about that air quality health index again today. That scale of 1 to 10 plus. Brandon yesterday at that 10 plus through the evening hours last night. Winnipeg, we were at about a 6 yesterday. Right now, Brandon's at a 5, which is in that moderate range. Consider reducing or rescheduling activities if you're at risk or prone to wildfire smoke, anything like that. 4 or 5 is when we sort of see that noticeable haze. So just putting that out there. We'll see that air quality kind of ebbing and flowing throughout the day again today across southern Manitoba and really most of central and northern Manitoba as well. Bit of instability rolls in tonight. I think a slim chance of a scattered shower in Winnipeg. Best chance for showers comes through the overnight hours into early morning through places like Brandon, through Dauphin, Swan River, the Parkland region. Good chance of seeing a few showers overnight into Thursday. Otherwise, a mix of sun and clouds as we get through the rest of Thursday into Friday. Better chance of showers once again through the south. In terms of rainfall accumulation, general, I'm saying 2 to 5, maybe up to 10 millimeters in parts of the Parkland area as some of that instability rolls through into the overnight period tonight, but just a trace through the Red River Valley through the night tonight. 20 degrees right now in Winnipeg, 17 in Brandon. Looking at temperatures across the south in the low 20s today, I've got Winnipeg at 24 degrees. Looking at 29 again for Thursday, 28 for Friday, and temperatures in the high 20s, Marcy, right through into next week. Next best chance for showers in Winnipeg comes through Sunday, Monday.
I was paying attention to that carefully. I went out and watered last night. I was looking at everything. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Riley.
No problem.
It is 23 minutes to 1 o'clock, and thanks for joining us here on Radio Noon. It's time for our call-in. So a reminder of the numbers in a moment. But first, let's set up what we're going to talk about today, shall we? There is a lot at stake in this U.S. presidential race, and the debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump last night was historic. They clashed on several key topics like foreign relations, economy, immigration, and a woman's right to choose. And it's unusual to have a debate like this when some of the candidates lie. Donald Trump, U.S. media, and certainly CBC as well, track these things. And last night, one of the U.S. outlets counted 33 lies. So watching anything like this live for an hour and a half is really something. We want to know why you watched. Why are you watching the U.S. presidential debate? As a Manitoban, what's at stake for you? And as a Canadian, what engages you in this particular race? So call us live and let us know if you watched last night, and we'll get you in on the conversation. The number to call, 204-780-0893, 204-780-0893. You can also text 204-588-7355. And I've got a number of Facebook comments as well that have been coming in. I posted we were going to talk about this. Sean McDonald's going to be a big part of our conversation. Sean joins us via Zoom. He's an instructor at the Asper School of Business at the University of Manitoba with degrees in politics and government and an expert in negotiation. Hi there.
Good afternoon.
So let's play a really short clip just to get started, because this is actually how the debate started last night. This is the handshake between Kamala Harris when she first stepped out, because these two people had never met before in person.
Kamala Harris, let's have a good debate.
Nice to see you. Have fun.
Thank you.
What'd you make, even right off the get-go, watching last night?
It was kind of icky. It was uncomfortable on several levels. And after what I thought was a somewhat policy-driven first question or two, it devolved and it just got worse and worse. My take on this, like so many, is I believe Harris won decisively, but not a knockout punch, meaning unlike with Joe Biden, where after the debate, the supporters of Biden were feeling very despondent, hopeless even, and readily admitted that they needed a new candidate. The Trump supporters, even though Trump performed, I think, by most accounts quite poorly, are not despondent. Now, I should add another thing is that we're talking, Marcy, about a pretty small amount of voters that are going to be persuaded. There's a confirmation bias on both sides. So those that supported Trump or were leaning towards Trump will probably still feel the same. Those with Harris will definitely feel the same. And then there's this group in the middle, and of that group in the middle, the group in the middle that is out of swing states is what they're really targeting. And there is the voters that they're after. And right now, I would say that Harris overperformed. I thought she could not have been better in some ways. And Trump was one of his worst performances. It's kind of a sliding scale because his debates with Joe Biden were a bit of a free-for-all and a mess. But I think we would have to give it to Harris, but not a knockout punch.
We just lost a caller, actually. I know somebody had just called in. So, Tyler, we lost you on the line. If you want to call back, 780-0893, if you want to weigh in the conversation. Let's get into some of the comments that are coming in here, Sean. Some of these came in this morning. We're asking on Facebook when I was mentioning we're going to do this. I always invite people, if you can't make it over lunch hour, to write to us at CBC. So we're asking, did you watch last night? Why? Particularly why in your perspective as a Manitoban? Brian Jameson said, yes, my wife and I watch because we spend 6 months a year living in the U.S., so American politics is important to us. Sounds like they're snowbirds. The debate was a thing of beauty, so obviously Brian, sounds like, at least I'm inferring, leaning to feeling that Kamala Harris had a solid performance last night, but I shouldn't infer that because he didn't elaborate. Grace Martell says, I can't say I've really followed U.S. politics that closely, but I understand the issues. I would really, though, not look forward to 4 more years of listening to Trump. Really, Grace writes, I need to do the tone correctly. Grace says, really? Migrants and immigrants eating dogs, cats, and pets? And if you missed the debate, I want to play the clip of this. We've got this lined up. So this was one of the moments a lot of people are talking about today.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets.
You talk about extreme.
Oh my.
When we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
So that was the exchange that people are talking about. He went on also, Sean, to say that Trump did last night, when it was verified, that there is no proof of this. City officials in the place that he's talking about, if even they went so far as to verify journalists that nothing like this had happened. Trump said he saw it on TV. What does it say to you about the state of American politics that we have someone that's running to lead the United States, and he's quoting things that apparently he saw somewhere on television that are egregious, and many this morning obviously are talking about as racist.
Yeah. So this has almost disqualifying components to it when we take this lowest of low roads when speaking about killing dogs and eating dogs and so on. American politics is at a much higher level of acrimony than we see in Canada. We may have, very disquieting comments and mean-spirited comments, but we're not at that level. I must say, however, that Trump just doesn't happen in a vacuum. There is a market, a significant market, that not only buys in, but vociferously adopts almost everything he says. And that's also part of American politics. So and it's exacerbated by social media. So we have a real comparison here. Why this matters, though, I'll give you 4 reasons. Number one, we're part of NATO. The U.S. is a dominant contributor and player in NATO, and whoever wins this will change or keep the composition of much of NATO. Number 2, we're a big trade partner with the United States. And once again, if there's major tariffs imposed, that's going to affect the economy in Canada, and that's going to affect people in Manitoba. Number 3, I think that very troublingly, a permission structure has now been established over the 9 years that Trump's been around, that it's okay to bash immigrants. And that's really troubling, because that type of attitude can go forward. And then the number 4 reason is the institutions that Donald Trump is bashing, things like the judiciary, everything from the IRS to even, oddly, law enforcement, that attitude of lack and elections themselves, that lack of faith in those institutions could also move north. And it's for those 4 reasons that this election matters quite a bit to Canadians.
And let's be clear, too, about some of what he said. He said he would long-term imprison people who are his political opponents, even donors to parties that aren't, supporting him. So he's laid out things that he would do, and you're talking about what he would do and institutional changes that he would make. Let's go to a caller who's called in live to Radio Noon. This is Mark on line 1. Hi, Mark.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. Why'd you watch last night?
Well, I've been trying to watch it for the last, I don't know how many hundreds of days, but yesterday, it just, to me, she put the bully in the corner and he couldn't find his way out. He's had 750 days to get himself ready for this point, and she's only had 51, and she outclassed him. There's another thing, too, is the whole border issue. He had the bill sitting on his desk in January 2023, and he refused to sign it to make it go against the Democratic Party. So he put himself in front of the country first. He basically told his own party not to vote for it. So I don't really know what more that people need to hear from him. His rhetoric, his lies, it's just old already. We're tired of it.
What is your emotional feeling? I mean, they're neck and neck going into last night, pretty much. I'm wondering, Mark, as a Canadian, what would worry you most, given that you obviously outlined that you have concerns about Donald Trump? What would worry you most as a Canadian and as a Manitoban should he be elected in November?
Well, I think mostly like the tariffs as well, right? Like him imposing all these tariffs. As you know, Canada has a lot of natural resources, and we export a lot of stuff to the U.S. This would hurt Canada a lot. This is a guy who really doesn't look up to his allies. I mean, Canada should be one of his allies. To him, he looks up to Viktor Orban. How many times did he talk about Viktor Orban yesterday? Viktor Orban is a puppet of Vladimir Putin. This is a guy that you look up to, Kim Jong-un, President Xi. But these are the guys that you consider your allies and your friends. If you do that, there's something mentally wrong with you.
Thank you for calling into to the Noon Show today. I appreciate you calling in with your perspective, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Sean, I want to ask you to build on something that was said there that Mark shared. He was talking, he highlighted the tariffs when I asked, what his worry would be as a Canadian and a Manitoban. What's your sense of, the perspective on that and the context, rather, for that in terms of tariffs specifically that maybe people might want to lean into and pay attention to whatever happens in the States?
Well, I think right away, agriculture and auto. And we do a great deal of exporting directly to the United States. And what's going to happen is that with the America first, that means outsiders last. And what that means is that the outsiders, the people that are exporting to the United States, will have to pay these tariffs. and therefore sell them in the United States at far less competition and simply not have the market in the United States that they used to. This will create inflation, and it'll create a lot of inflation in the United States. But for Canadians, it's going to slow things down, and they're going to have to find other markets. I want to bring up one other thing, and that is the caller talked about Donald Trump's, I guess, penchant for cozying up to strongmen and dictators, and mentioned that. That's concerning because it's doing so at the expense of some of the traditional allies and traditional ways in which we've done our foreign relations. And if we start involving these new cast of characters in a meaningful way, that may be at the expense of all the other relationships we have. And I think that's a loss.
I want to just put the numbers out again as well. I've got a couple more comments from listeners here also. So if you want to call us, 780-0893, 780-0893. If you're talking to your radio, I always say just pick up the phone and call. We're going to run out of time. It's 10 to 1. You can call now, 780-0893. If you want to text, 204-588-7355. Our guest to help us through this via Zoom Live with us on Radio Noon is Sean McDonald, instructor at Asper School of Business at the University of Manitoba, an expert in negotiation and also with degrees in politics. So Judy Hushkevich wrote into CBC, this matters because the U.S. is our biggest and closest neighbor and ally. It's a cousin living next door. That's how Judy words things. Constance Cravens wrote in, I am part of the LGBTQIA plus community. I support women's rights to their own bodies. I'm against guns being purchased for everyone. I'm also a person of color. I do not support limits on immigration. And I hope that Kamala gets in. Constance writes, I'm so tired of having old Anglo-American privileged men in government. There are other people who have ideas too in America, not just them. And finally, Chris Brandon writing in, the U.S. election will be the most consequential election for not just the U.S., but the entire world. Is that overstated in your view, or what is at stake here in your view, Sean?
It's hard to say that something is the most consequential. Politicians say this every day, that this is the most important election. And what's new about this one, though, what's concerning about it is that there, for the first time, really until 3 years ago, there's a real fear of a peaceful transition of government. And if that does not occur, so if Harris wins, but they're not happy about it, to go down this sort of rabbit hole is a little scary, because this one is unique for the fact that there may be people who will resist a new government, and that will lead to a great deal of destabilizing influences throughout the United States. That one worries me quite a bit. Some of the other stuff, we have a way of sorting out these economic issues. I believe your Facebook or
people writing in, yep.
Yeah, is very correct that we are moving towards a society you would hope that is more inclusive, and yet we see some sides, particularly far-right U.S., is going in the exact opposite direction of shutting things down.
And let's take Trump.
We're worried.
And let's take Trump at his word, because last night, this is factually last night when he was asked about January 6th and what happened in the States, he doubled down on what happened there, and he has said that he said repeatedly last night he about the peaceful transition of power. He continues to say, well, as long as it's fair, and we'll have a huge problem with that. He uses words like bloody when he's describing these things. We do have 2 more calls here, so let's boogie along. So here we go. We have Alan with us. Alan, what concerns you about last night? Because I understand you have some concerns.
Well, one of the biggest concerns is Trump's influence on Ukraine, and the fact that Putin will have free reign. As Kamala Harris said, he would already be in Kyiv if Trump were president. And that will affect Europe incredibly. And if Putin actually advances through Ukraine, we're all going to be in big trouble.
As a Manitoban, Alan, what concerns you from your perspective here in our province?
Well, I'm of Ukrainian heritage, and a lot of people in Manitoba are of Ukrainian heritage. And I think we're very concerned about the global issues as much as anything here. I agree that tariffs would be disastrous for us, but there are issues that are incredibly larger, including Trump's effect on climate change in the United States, which would be horrendous. He's just a very bad choice. He has to lose very badly in the States to get the message through that things have to change there.
Thank you for calling in, Alan. We're going to go to another one of our callers. Thank you for raising climate for us to talk about and also what was said about Ukraine last night. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Dave is on next caller here we have. Sean, we'll just go to another caller before we run out of time. Why did you watch last night, Dave?
I didn't. If I wanted to hear an old man babble, I'd call my dad. But I read the highlights of it.
Mm-hmm.
My fear is for the authoritarianism, fascism type stuff that he likes to promote. Like, they're the most powerful country in the world, and I don't want to see that kind of leadership there who support, like the other person said, like Putin and North Korea and all that. Like, I want them to be a good role model for other people in other elections and things, that we don't have to move that way.
Thank you for weighing in on Radio Noon, Dave. Appreciate it. So, Sean, back to you. I'm just, in terms of what's being raised there, in terms of the importance of the global relationships, what are your thoughts on that? And us as, we as Canadians here, how we should be viewing last night and those relationships? You started the conversation today talking about NAFTA.
Yeah. So this is not just an old man yelling at a cloud. This has some real economic and truly our way of life implications. With NAFTA, first of all, NAFTA, the USMCA was rebranded. I expected that to be far more streamlined and less available for Canadians to access U.S. markets. I think in terms of NATO, we need to be very concerned that the U.S. may threaten to redefine its relationship with NATO with far less commitment, and that's going to affect many other elements in the globe. And your caller correctly identified climate change. I know we're out of time, but the reality is that when you have a candidate that's just saying drill, baby, drill, that type of reckless attitude and almost denialism towards the really existential threat of climate change is irresponsible and disappointing.
I'm gonna ask you what you're gonna as a last question, because we're getting ready to wrap here in a moment. What you think about the weeks ahead? But just really briefly though, I need to introduce though this thing about Kamala Harris last night, because you brought up drill baby drill for Trump. Kamala Harris is being accused of trying to have it both ways. Back in the day, saying that maybe she'd be anti-fracking. Saying last night she's not against fracking, but she is highlighting green initiatives. Can she have that both ways?
People evolve, and so to a degree, it's okay in some cases, although they say not in politics, to change your mind. So she changed her mind. I will say this. There is areas that require scrutiny of Kamala Harris, like why didn't this happen in the 3.5 years she was in office?
Which were Trump's closing statements, actually. He waited the whole debate and then brought that up later, yeah.
There were a lot of things that, because we're all over the place, didn't land, and it made it such a one-sided debate. Kamala Harris deserves scrutiny, but against kind of this mishmash of xenophobia and anger, it was lost.
So in our last minute here then, how do you think the next weeks are going to go for these candidates leading up to November?
Okay, so I think there's two things they'll focus in on. The first is to identify their vote and bring it out. And the second is to convince that tiny sliver of the population that's undecided and in swing states that they move to their side. In some ways, I think the Democrats have a better ground game. They always do, and they have early voting through mail-in ballots. That favors that. The counterfactor is that the Republicans always seem to underscore in polls, with the exception of 22 with the Dodd's decision available. So that's my long-winded way of saying I'm not sure. If I were to bet, I would bet Democrats close.
We're wrapping it there. Sean McDonald on our live call-in from the Asper School of Business at U of M. Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for calling. This is CBC's Radio Noon. I'm Marcy Marcusa.